Recording in progress.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Broken Brain Podcast. It's me, Dwight, your host, today to look at the intersection between culture, psychology, and health. We are getting into health today, which is a fun conversation to have and even more fun to pursue. Everybody knows that pursuing health and healthy behaviors is always fun. That's not true, and that's why we're actually here, is to talk about how to make it something that you can do, that you feel the confidence to do, which is one of the biggest obstacles to being healthy, I think, is believing that we can. So I am really glad to be joined today by PJ Glassey, who is a biohacker, an expert on neuroscience, exercise, and brings an expertise of blending what we've learned about the brain and brain science with nutrition, exercise, and just looking for that better health and enjoyment of our lives. So, PJ, thanks for being here.
Love it. Thanks for having me, Dwight.
Well, could you tell everybody a little bit about how did you get into the space of working with health? And by the way, I really like that in all the stuff that came to me as we were scheduling is you have an idea of health. And I really like when people don't just differentiate physical health, mental health, whatever. It's all health. That's something I'm a big believer in, is it's all in the same body, right? So, but anyway, how did you get into this?
Well, it started in high school when I started exercising because I was a skinny kid and I didn't want to be so skinny. So then I just kind of got hooked. And then I was also passionate about psychology because, friends would tend to come to me with their problems and want advice, and even in high school. And so I kind of had a knack for that. And so when I started in college at SPU, I started as a psych major and then did fine with that and learned a lot. But then my senior year, I kind of realized that my real passion was exercise, fitness, and health. So I switched to exercise science my senior year and graduated with that, but had a lot of training and classes in psych, and that was really fun and still one of my passions. So those are my two, and I've kind of combined them now. So that's how we do things at X Gym, and that's how I help people get fitter and healthier using a lot of psych. And I even have a brain type test that I developed. And combining the two, because the bottom line is when someone wants to get healthier and fitter, they have to change their brain as their body changes. And the reason that's so important is because they have to be, when they're finally reached their physical results, they have to be a different person for that to stick. Otherwise, they're going to yo-yo, because the brain is the boss of us. And especially the subconscious, which operates at about the level of a 3-year-old. So our toddler is in charge. And the other part of our brain, the conscious part, the prefrontal cortex, is like the parent brain, and that can train the toddler. And so because the toddler is always in charge, and we don't have a say in that, but we do have a say in how we can train the toddler. And so then the toddler is cooperating with us instead of working against us. So as we're getting in better shape and we're getting in better health, if we're properly training the toddler along the way, then the toddler's different when our body is different and our health inside and out is different. And now the toddler is not fighting us because the toddler isn't the same. If the toddler's the same, and most people don't change their toddler, they just change their body and health, then the toddler will bring that person back to where they were because the toddler didn't change. So it's really more about the subconscious than anything else.
So there's like the kind of that more automatic part of us. And a lot of people are familiar, right, with that terminology of an inner child. And you're also, then you're going to this next step that is, you could call an inner parent as well. You can't control a child, but you can teach it. Is that kind of what we're talking about, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And just like it's really hard to control a toddler, right? But there's certain strategies we can do in the short term and in the long term to turn that toddler out to be an adult that makes sense and does the right things. But even even just as a toddler, there is a really well-behaved toddler that you'll see, on the street or in the restaurant or whatever, and there's the very misbehaved toddler. So what we're trying to accomplish is the well-behaved toddler. So then the things that we're trying to achieve, and this just isn't health and fitness either. It's business, it's religion, it's faith, it's everything else, where anything where the toddler might fight against can be mitigated and minimized with the right programming. It's literally rewiring your brain, your toddler. So the toddler is our ally and not our enemy.
It's interesting as you say that. I think of a literal toddler, and the example that comes to my mind is taking a little kid to the grocery store. And anybody who's parented or even babysat or something, that as an adult, it can easily feel like this kid's main goal in life is to really screw up the trip to the grocery store. That's almost like they're just, hey boy, if I can think of any way to make this worse, then I'm gonna do it. And I think trying to engage at that level of being like, I am engaging at the emotional level of where this toddler is, and trying to treat it like, hey, are there ways for us to make a team? Can I gamify this somehow, or can we, or just not take things personally, or whatever it has to be. Trying to engage with them as we would engage with a toddler, whereas sometimes we try to engage with it as either just an annoyance, even a real kid, not just a part of us, right? It's like, oh, here we go. I wish they would just whatever, stop it. Or we try to reason like an adult would. And that's the thing I think that maybe it would be a good thing to that I have to ask you and get into is, so how do we engage with this toddler in our brain in a way that we can speak its language, right? And motivate it the way we should?
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate enough to be a granddad right now of a 2-year-old. And so I'm right in the thick of it. And he is quite well behaved because his parents are amazing. But you still have to know how to speak their language. And a toddler loves the status quo. Toddler doesn't like change. Toddler loves comfort, hates discomfort. And so you just have to be, of course, understanding. And what I tell people is give your toddler a name. I named mine Timmy. And so I just talked to Timmy and talked to him how I would my grandson, and just very understanding and very patient. And I will thank Timmy for his input on something when I feel like Timmy is working against me. And I will say, hey, where's that coming from? And anytime you ask your subconscious a question, you have just assigned it a project. And that answer might come immediately. It might come in your sleep. It might come in the shower. It might come in the morning. Whenever you have those kind of light bulb goes off kind of moments. But put the question out there and don't expect an answer right away. But it's an ongoing conversation with patience and love, because you can't get rid of this toddler. He's part of you. He's in you. And so it's just a matter of not fighting against the toddler, but working with the toddler, just like a good parent would. So anything that works on a toddler, as a good parent, will work on your subconscious. And there's lots of brain training techniques you can do with it. Like, for instance, toddlers understand images and emotions. That's why they like storybooks so well. And that's why they like emotional reading of a storybook. It's really exciting. They're also really gullible. So if you create images and emotions, especially with emotion, to that toddler, it is more likely to accept what you're saying. So that's why visualization with emotion, or even affirmations, is what most people call them. I call them declarations, but it's the same idea. It's just a matter of if you're doing the visualization, to really close your eyes and focus on something that you want as if it has already happened, and how you feel now in the present because it has happened. and make that really emotional. Really, it could be exciting, it could be scary. It doesn't really matter what the emotion is. But if you think back about your most vivid memories, things that you remember like it was yesterday, it's because that was an emotional moment. And you'll remember that picture and that image in your mind very clearly. And it's burned into your memory. Well, this is how we train a toddler, is with this imagery and emotion, to burn it into the toddler, so the toddler will be convinced and therefore believe what is going on and what the toddler should be doing and how the toddler should be acting.
And we're doing so with respect for where they're coming from. It strikes me there's a lot of emotional internal work on the show. We've had a lot of guests and stuff where we talk about parts work, or internal family systems is the name that's assigned to that a lot of times, where we would treat, and in therapy we would even literally sit and do some of the exercises you're saying, which is, let's identify where's this feeling, where is it centered in your body, let's talk to it. And one of the things that is useful and empowering is also one of the things people find to be difficult, which is, I'm not trying to invent or make up what I pretend that this part of me, this inner toddler would say. I'm trying to feel, what do I feel like it is going to say? And that's what's empowering, is we get out of our head and we don't have to, it's not the traditional logical, like linear problem solving that we use for so many things. But the hard part is that linear problem solving works for so many and is necessary as a skill for life. And so we keep trying to say, well, here's what I think it would say. It would probably say, I hate you. And it's like, no, let's try to go with our emotional feelings and try to get, it's a whole different frame of reference, I think.
Yeah. And if your inner toddler is having a tantrum, that's when you're going to feel the most angry. And if your inner toddler is feeling joy, that's when you're going to feel the happiest. And so that toddler really is in control. But what you're talking about is getting in touch with and having a close relationship with the toddler. So, and just like a good parent, they're very close to their toddler, and the toddler is very close to the parent. The toddler will run to the parent for hugs and affirmation and love and all those good feelings, because that's a good parent. And the parent will come to the toddler and give back. And so you're talking about just really getting in touch with and getting close to the toddler. And that's super important.
But yet sometimes with our own internal relationship we have to our internal childish parts, we treat them in ways, we treat this internal toddler in a way that we would never treat our own child or even somebody else's. Not to make a huge difference. Hopefully we all respect other people's children too, but we wouldn't treat any kid that way. We would consider ourselves an abusive parent if we shut up, get out of here, I hate you, or whatever. And that also would make a child not feel safe coming up for a hug, because I came up for a hug and you pushed me away. So I feel like there's a dynamic internally when we don't think of it that way, where we become a bad parent inside.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's a great question to ask. How am I treating my inner toddler? How do I talk to myself? Do I talk to myself like I would my best friend, trying to help my best friend out of her problem? Or do I talk to myself like I don't like myself? And so that's the question to ask. And then the next question would be, okay, how can I fix that? Or how can I make it better?
What kind of an evolution do you see people going through with that relationship, that internal relationship? I see the communication between their conscious brain and their subconscious brain improving, and things come up, because part of the job of the toddler is also to protect us. So the toddler is back there assessing emotions and things that are about to come out but haven't come out yet. And then the toddler can help prevent things from coming out, depending on if the toddler thinks we're not ready to deal with them or not. So this is where a lot of people will feel repressed
emotions or even repressed experiences where something really awful happened in their past that comes out when they're 32 years old. They go, whoa, how did I? And so, it surprises them. Well, the toddler finally released it or couldn't hold a grasp on it anymore. And as people get closer to their toddler, the toddler will release more of those things. And that person will become more in touch with themselves because the toddler is them. Mm-hmm. That is a huge part of them. And another reason to get along great with your toddler and raise it up in the right way, so then the two of you can cooperate, and then you can work through these things. There's countless examples of people that I've worked with who have either had abuse in their past, and so they are protecting themselves with food and comfort, or their parent, like one guy told me that, well, yeah, the reason that it's hard for me to control my nutrition is because every time I had a negative emotion, mom would just solve it with food. She just put food in front of me. So I have that wiring. And so what he was telling me is that's how my toddler's wired. So then we just work on, okay, that's fine. And that's you. So accept it and thank your toddler for protecting you and working for your benefit. And now let's talk about how we can reprogram and rewire the toddler so we can get rid of that.
I like that, where it starts with the acceptance, where I think so many times with self-improvement, particularly when we get into things like exercise and how we eat, so much of it is dominated by shame.
Yeah.
Right. Of like, I have to the point where many people almost endorse, like, I have to hate my body before I can reshape it or do something to it, or and whether or not the thing is even possible, even if I have a whole different expectation for myself than what is medically appropriate or possible, I should still punish myself for not being able to reach it.
Yeah, exactly. And shame is one of those top emotions that will pull us back down after we have achieved some progress with health and fitness. So if we can reprogram and rewire the toddler to get rid of that shame, or at least minimize it somewhat, then there's going to be less tension there between where we are physically and where we are in our brain. And what I tell people is it's kind of like, if you can explain how the body, so I don't know how many people are just audio and how many people are video on this, but I've got my hands held up and they're at the same level. So now I'm going to illustrate improvement in health or fitness. So now one hand is going higher because it's improving, but the other hand is staying down here, right? Because the other hand is my brain, my toddler especially. So now I've got all this improvement physically, but the toddler brain is still down here. Now imagine there's a rubber band between these two hands. And so as the physical and health improvement goes up and the toddler stays down here, the rubber band tension increases. So if the toddler stays the same and he's holding on to shame or whatever else he's holding on to, that rubber band increases. So yeah, I get these great results, but then if the toddler hasn't changed and we haven't gotten past some of those emotions, the toddler's always going to win. And now the rubber band is going to snap me back down. And that's where yo-yo dieting comes from.
Yes. And that's a great, when they do research on diets, people don't like to talk about this sometimes because it can be exciting to discover a diet, especially if it seems like it's working for people that you know. But the research shows that, unless I'm mistaken, as far as last I was aware, the research shows that most of them don't really work in any kind of long-term way. And even if you use several different metrics to measure the word work, which is, subjective a little bit too. But
right.
Yeah. What do you see about that?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons that a diet may or may not work. And the most profound is the one that we just talked about, the brain, about sticking with it and what I tell people is you're not going to know if a diet is going to work for you physically until probably about 3 months. And so if you can do a certain diet 100% for 3 months, then you'll know if it's going to work for you or not. And I recommend the Mediterranean first because that's the easiest to do and it's a healthy diet. Mm-hmm. And then if they can do the Mediterranean for 3 months, then they're ready to try something else if it didn't work. Now, if someone does the Mediterranean for 3 months and they're in poor condition, health and fitness, it's going to work to some extent because it's a great diet. But maybe they want to switch to paleo, or maybe they want to try keto. Well, if they have been able to do the Mediterranean 100% for 3 months, then they're ready to try another diet that's a little more, I guess you would say, strict or whatever. But and keto being the most strict, and in my opinion, the hardest to do. But for some different purposes and different people, it could be the best diet. But you really don't know what the best diet is going to be until you try things out and do your own experiments.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've had doctors and psychiatrists on the program who have talked about the effects of our diet on our gut health and our mental health and balancing mood regulation and things. And the Mediterranean has come up quite a bit. People have talked about that quite often. Mediterranean approach, that kind of approach. I was curious. I like the nuance and the mixing it up in individualization. Is there anything to be said for maybe those of us who have let's say ADHD or ebb and flow in some of the things that cause us to lose the thread of a new thing that works? Is there any potential drawback or benefit to saying, if I can nail something for 3 months and I want to switch it up every couple of months, is that okay? If I'm doing something healthy, that I keep cycling through different approaches rather than say, now you got to stick to this rest of your life, bub.
No, totally. Yeah. There are a lot of really good diets out there, and, paleo or primal and Mediterranean, those are all great diets because they are it's all whole food. It's real food. So what you're doing in all of those cases is you're cutting out the processed food, which is fake food. And a lot of it isn't even food. It's just a food like Twinkies. That's not a food. That's a food-like substance. But there's no nutritional value, and it's mostly just lab-created synthetic stuff. But when you're eating really whole, healthy foods, then that's what the thing that those diets have in common. And there's, the Atkins came out years ago, and that's like dirty keto. That just says, it doesn't really matter where the food comes from or the source. Just, eat lots of bacon and cheese. And then, and then there's the clean keto where everything's organic. It's real food. It's real vegetables. It's certain kinds of fat that are all organic, and it's certain kinds of protein. And so you're really picking and choosing. And then when you do clean eating, then your body cleans up and it detoxes, and you get rid of all the garbage that, we're eating and inhaling and all the stuff throughout the day. And you're becoming a good detoxer, which is amazing for the brain. And of course, exercise, which is good for the heart, and anything is good for the heart is also good for the brain. And so then you're achieving the mental clarity. And if people do have ADD, that's going to be drastically reduced. But like your example is, there are some people that maybe don't have ADD, but just like variety, and they need to do Mediterranean for 3 months, and then they need to switch to something else because they're bored with that. And a lot of those types of people are also discoverers. They just like discovering new experiences and trying new things. That brain type is typically the kind of person who will pick up a banjo because he or she just wants to be good at that, and they want to learn the language of music, and then they will continue to do it until they are medium proficient, and then they start getting bored, and they go, okay, well, now I'm going to go get my pilot's license, and then because that's the new brain stimulation, and they'll become medium proficient, good enough that they feel like, okay, I've gotten what I've I've learned what I wanted to learn out of this. Now I'm going to switch to this other thing. I'm going to get my ham radio license or whatever. So it's completely different.
And
I'm that guy. I don't have ADD, but I certainly have that issue. And so I'm constantly switching around. But that's also really good for the brain to learn new things, especially things that are outside your field of expertise that you really know nothing about. And when you're learning it, as soon as it gets really hard and you're like, oh man, why did I pick this? This is so hard. That's actually when the most brain benefits start. So if you can remember, you're learning a new language, let's learn Mandarin Chinese. That's really hard. And so you get to a point where someday you're like, I don't even know if I want to keep doing this anymore because this is so hard. Just remember, now your brain is changing.
And that's an interesting element that we don't take into account is that's the psychological benefit of whether it's exercise or hobbies or different things. The psychological benefit is not dependent on how fluent I am in Mandarin, if that makes sense. That's a whole different metric. If I'm looking for the mental health benefit, it's that I'm doing a novel thing and that I have curiosity, that I'm making brain connections. I love that you're talking about that because I see so much shame inhibit people engaging from life if their brain happens to work that way. I talk to a lot of people about revolving different methods of organizational habits, especially if I'm a distractible person. I got this whiteboard and it worked great for 3 weeks. And then I forgot, it just blended into the wall and it's just a piece of art that says, get up on time. And so I'm always reminded, by the way, whenever I think of health goals and organizational techniques, I always remember a panel from The Far Side, if anyone remembers that comic. Where it just shows a guy sitting on his bed and he has a sign up on the wall, a big old huge sign that says, "First pants, then your shoes." And anyway, I feel like I need that. I got to put up that sign. But then engaging, but also with hobbies and healthy enjoyment of saying like, well, I wanted to get into 3D printing and I did it. And now I got a pile of stuff over there and I haven't touched it in a while. And it's like, if you have space for it, leave that little pile, go make another little pile and then come back to it sometime and or don't. And guess what? Your quality of life and the psychological benefit you got from engaging in this will still be there. It's not like my life is wasted because I never got super dope at 3D printing. I just got kind of good at it. That's okay.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. It is so good for the brain to learn lots of new things because once you become super proficient at something, you're not actually getting as much benefit anymore by getting more proficient or more of an expert. So I think the people who get medium proficient and then switch over, I think it's their brain just saying, hey, I really liked all the neural changes that were happening up until now, but they're slowing down. So give me something else hard to do. Give me something else new to learn about that I have no idea about so I can make more neural connections.
I'm curious about the definition of goals. When we look at, I got to get into better shape. It's one of those things that everybody says, and we all think there's an objective universal definition for that. And when we're engaging in health goals, do you have any feedback for us on what is a maybe bad direction to go or a good direction to go as far as how do I craft that? I mean, for example, a lot of people are just like, I got a goal for my New Year's resolution is lose weight, and there's no other thought put into it, for example. And for aesthetics, oftentimes is what governs that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of wisdom behind the whole SMART goals thing. So look up SMART goals, easy to Google, and because that's the most common. Now, what I tell people, even before you do that, is define why you are making your goal. So take out a piece of paper and just write down the reason, why do I want to lose weight? Or whatever the goal is. And then you'll write down an answer. And then look at that answer and say, why do I want that? And then write down the answer. And then look at that and say, why do I want that? It's like a toddler saying why. We're all familiar with the toddler. And my dad was gracious enough to always answer my whys and until he ran out of knowledge. And then at the end, he would say, that's all I have for you. You have reached the end of my knowledge. And so then, but I've learned a lot, and so did he, and we had a great conversation. So you can have that own conversation with yourself until you run out of answers. And that's probably your real reason. Then you can do your SMART goals, and you can post your real reason on the bathroom mirror or the refrigerator or wherever you're going to see it a ton, and remind yourself. So then you can go back to your real why, because just a general thing like I want to lose weight isn't very meaningful. It's not emotional. You can't draw an image for that. And so your toddler is just not going to care. But if you can make your toddler care, then your toddler is going to help you reach that goal instead of stay the same and work against you and then snap you back with that rubber band if you can make progress.
So if I get down to that specifics and, it seems like you could find things that would actually be either more important or even contradict the original goal that we start with.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at that and say, I just assumed I should be exercising to lose weight. And maybe as part of that, you get down to it and it's like, I really want to be stronger. And it's like, well, actually, if I'm building muscle, I might weigh more, or something like that. Or if someone like, I want to have ease of motion or go running or something. And it's like some of those, the scale in my bathroom may not be certainly not the only, but may not even be a useful metric for some of those goals.
Yeah.
If that's the only thing I look at and then I feel ashamed when it doesn't hit the right number, then I'm not actually moving towards my goal.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you're coming back to this shame thing, because that is the number one thing that if we don't change, will snap us back down. That's the number one reason for the diet yo-yo, weight loss yo-yo, is the shame thing. So that would definitely need to be solved. But I just think of one example of like what you were saying. It made me think of a woman who was talking to one of my members, and she came to me with, I just want to lose weight. Okay, well, why? And then after about 10 minutes of whys, she's in tears saying, I don't want to end up like my mom. And her mom was really unhealthy and diabetes, and she had cancer, and she was miserable, and she could barely walk and all this. And she wasn't that old. I mean, she was only like 72. And so the real why came out, and then that was the real motivation. And so that's what we came up with for her real goal. Yeah. Now, also, what she was describing to me was away from motivation. There's that, but there's also toward motivation. So away from motivation can be a great starter. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't typically last very long. So if you think of a rocket taking off from the Earth, there's a lot of energy. So we need a lot of motivation to get us started. And then the rocket is blasting off, and the further it gets away from Earth's gravity, the less energy or motivation it needs. But it's also, if we only have motivation, then that's going to wane. And then pretty soon the rocket's going to fall back to Earth. It's not going to get to the other planet it's headed for. However, the other planet is toward motivation. So we got to find out, sure, what are we motivated away from? But let's come up with something we're motivated toward. So when we get away from the Earth's gravity and overcome that initial inertia, let's get into the other planet's gravity. So now it's pulling towards us because the motivation's gone, but now we need the toward motivation. And along the way, along that journey, we're going to also develop discipline, because motivation, even if it's toward motivation, sometimes can wane, often wanes, and motivation isn't good enough by itself. We need to develop discipline, because that's what carries people through the end and all the way through to their goals. And that looks different for everybody, but it needs to happen. Discipline is much more important than motivation.
Yeah, when I've worked with addictions, and I used to work, I worked for a while in community mental health and almost exclusively with court-ordered addiction, and you'd think, I'm going to go to jail is pretty good motivation to make a change. Right. And it turns out it's a pretty good burst for a peak of
Hmm.
success of simply abstaining from a substance.
Yeah.
But if you don't ever find a reason to remain
Mm.
healthy with your
Mm.
engagement with intoxicants,
Yeah.
if you then you're probably just going to go back to what you were, even if you might make it long enough to get off probation. But a lot of
Yeah.
people have a hard time with that because probation's a couple years sometimes,
Totally. Yeah.
or more. So
Mm.
that's a great fact you get. How much of this is trying to find a new normal in our lives to where my activities, my healthy activities become like normal to me. Like I say, like,
Yeah.
if health is a goal, if it's a goal for a short term, that's not really, but if it's like, I want to do the thing, anyway, I'm just curious, like finding something
Yeah.
that I just do. I just do this now, whatever it is.
Yes. Well, everybody is already like that. They already have, I just do this now. This is who I am. So, what we're talking about here is changing your identity towards a certain thing. And as you change your brain and your body together, like I was illustrating earlier with both hands going up at the same time, when you reach your goals at the end, then your brain has also changed along with your body, which means your identity is the same. So when you were down here, you did certain unhealthy things and your body is unhealthy because your brain told you to do those unhealthy things, but they both changed together, they improve together until you get to that point where you've achieved your goals. Now your brain is different. Now you have a different identity because your brain has literally been rewired. And that's what my brain type test is all about, is to helping people rewire their brain. So then you get there and now you're stuck there. Instead of stuck down here, you're stuck up here because your brain changed with your body. And now that's just, you do, there's a whole bunch of new habits that you do because that's who you are. And you do them because, well, that's just who I am.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. How do, how do you approach helping people to select particular activities of exercise, behaviors of exercise? I know that, you know, um, studies that I've seen show that most people do not enjoy going to the gym, but my experience has been that all people believe that in order to be healthy, I have to go to the gym.
Yeah,
So
right.
and if I don't, then there's something wrong with me and my approach, and once again, shame. But how do
Yeah.
people, let's say that it's in that majority of people who don't groove on gym life.
Yeah.
What kinds of things how do people find that for themselves?
Well, it's just their own self discovery. So, what I tell new members at the X Gym is I don't want you to be a member here forever because I want you to develop as a person and change your wiring and your identity and all those things so your habits are different. And you find you don't, because if somebody comes to my gym for forever, then they're dependent on me. That's too much pressure on me. I don't want that. So, I want them to develop their own passions. And maybe they don't really have any, but let's keep working on this. Let's find out what does interest you. And maybe they take up paddleboarding, or maybe they're, walks in the woods, or maybe they have a dog that needs to be walked that isn't being walked. Walking is amazing, but there's other really fun things. And depending on their personality or their brain type, they will land on certain things. Or if it's somebody with my brain type, then for the next 3 months, it's going to be paddleboarding, and then for the 3 months after that, it's going to be forest bathing. That's what we call walks in the woods. It used to be normal 200 years ago. Everybody did forest bathe every day because that's how we lived. But now we gave it a name. Going out to the woods and taking a walk is now called forest bathing because we have all these concrete jungles.
It sounds so much cooler to call it that.
I know it does.
What are you doing? I just went for a walk. Okay. What are you doing? I'm forest bathing. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right. Hell yeah. Tell me more. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so it's an individual
thing
preference
too, right?
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's an attitude thing too. And it's just your own discovery. But I do encourage people, because variety is so good for the brain. I do encourage people, don't get stuck in a rut, because even if let's say you take up running, and your first day you can run 1 block, and then after 2 years you're running a marathon. Great. And that's super. But just like the brain, the body will adapt to things once you become an expert at it. So now, 2 years down the road, you've been a marathoner for a year. Your body isn't getting the same benefit that it did when you were a beginner runner. And so, sure, keep running. If, because a lot of people find the whole Zen or whatever with their brain and they like to, and it's mentally, it's awesome. So yeah, keep doing it. But let's find something else that's different from that you can also do. Or just mix up the running. Maybe stick interval training in the middle of it. Or maybe run somewhere else.
Yeah, you see people engage with finding engaging places to run that are different, maybe outdoors. Yeah. Or you see these events that people have where it's like a obstacle course that you run, or you run while people throw mud at you or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, or water balloons. I don't know. That's one I just thought of, water balloon running. Yeah.
That's great.
It's very... as I said, right when we were, I said this right before we hit record, actually, is one of the things that attracted me to have you on is the same thing that does for a lot of people. A lot of people come on with solutions and things they've really worked hard at developing. And I can always tell, for me, it's a good sign when they have nuance and individuation, and they appreciate that everybody is an individual. And that's what stood out to me. It's not just, I'm selling a thing. And it's like, no, I'm actually trying to engage with an approach, right, that is adaptable. And so I really, really appreciate you sharing it with us. I want to give people a heads up of where they can follow you, not just on the jogging trail, but where they can follow you and your work. But first, I always like to ask people if they have a way of giving back to the community that they would endorse for people, a good thing to do, or a nonprofit or charity that you believe in. What would you share with the audience?
Well, I guess specifically, my favorite charity is the Liberty Road Foundation, and they just do lots of great things for really needy people. And so that's who I donate to. That's my number one. But then kind of a takeaway is for people to, what I tell people to do is for their own benefit and the benefit of others, is to go out and walk for at least 5 smiles. So notice I said smiles, not miles. And so go for a walk and see until you can make 5 people smile. And then turn around and come back. And you could do it on the way back too. But it's the trip out that matters. And then if you're not a big walker fan, then after a mile or so, you're going to be pretty desperate and you're going to be trying really hard to make people smile so you can go back home. But everybody's benefiting. I used to be a competitive tower runner, meaning, the races that go up the inside stairwells of skyscrapers. And
oh, wow. That's intense.
Yeah. And what I found helped me get faster was to encourage others along the way. So I pass somebody and I pat them on the back and I say, wow, you're looking good. Keep it up. And trying to make people smile. And so by the time, because tower running is miserable physically, it hurts so much. It's awful. At the end, you're like, wow, I'm never going to do one of these things again. It's so awful. But that's what made it tolerable for me, and frankly got me addicted, dopamine addicted to it, is encouraging others. And it just made it a whole different experience. So I was benefiting and they were benefiting. Everybody's winning. So when people are first getting started in fitness and they don't know where to start, I say, go for smiles walks. Go walk for, pick a number and go for that many smiles.
I like this because then sometimes other people out in the community that we come in contact with are either very neutral. We don't even acknowledge them in our mind as people. They're just things that are there, or enemy, potential. We're just kind of like, I have to deal with a person. But I like this very much. It turns it into almost a scavenger hunt. And I guess that's helpful, right? Because it distracts a bit maybe the part of me that might be saying like, can I go on yet? Well, come on. Yeah. Or at least gives it something to work on to get there. So very cool. Thank you. Well, where do people follow your work?
xgym.com, xgym.com. That's most of my stuff is on there. And I referred to the brain type tests, and that's braintype.me. And those are the 2 main things. I mean, all my socials and everything are on xgym.com. And then for brain rewiring, it's braintype.me.
Thank you so much. A quick reminder to everybody listening that we are, as every month, we pick a local charity from an area to focus on, and we have a returning champion charity of the Because organization in Philadelphia, which is an organization that helps with human trafficking, particularly helping those who have exited the trauma and are no longer being trafficked to get back into, or for the first time, many times, getting into society with work and medical care and things that many of us take for granted. They are having an event over October and November, virtual. This works well. It's a walking event as well. There's a walk or a run that you can do. And the cool thing about this is it is virtual participation. You can do it wherever you are. You don't have to be in Philadelphia. And it helps to raise funds for awareness of human trafficking and provide truly trauma-informed care for survivors that go through this program. They've been a charity of highlight, and we've had their CEO and founder on a couple of times on the show, and so we're happy to kind of go back into this for when they're going to be our focus charity for the next for this month and the next as well, in order to help drive up a little bit of awareness for that and for the great things that they do. So everybody go to becauseorganization.org to learn more about this and get the specifics. Also, as always, if anybody joins our Patreon, patreon.com/brokenbrain, to help support the show, really appreciate that. And 50% of your donation, if it's done during the month of whatever charity we're highlighting during that month, 50% of your donation will always go towards that organization for the duration of your membership. And you'll get the fun bonus materials and get to hear my silky smooth voice even more. So, PJ, I'm so grateful for you today taking the time and the work that you're doing to help people to be healthy.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. It's been great to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Court and Parts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court and Parts shows, visit courtandarts.com.